Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko meets his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin as protests continue across Belarus in the wake of last month's disputed presidential elections. We'll be getting the latest from our Moscow correspondent, Nick Holsworth. And growing concern on both sides of the channel that Britain might indeed be heading for a no-deal Brexit by the end of the year as its parliament debates a government-proposed bill that will break with international law. Also here in France, large parts of the country continue to experience record heatwave conditions. In Paris, the mercury is expected to hit 33 degrees Celsius. Hello and welcome back to the France 24 newsroom. I'm Annette Young. But first to our top story, and embattled Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko has met Vladimir Putin today as protests calling for his resignation show no signs of abating. The meeting taking place in the Russian Black Sea resort of Sochi, where the two men met, and Putin, a key ally of the Belarusian regime, spoke to Lukashenko. Meantime, in the capital Minsk on Sunday, more than 100,000 people took to the streets, marking the sixth week of anti-government protests. Let's cross now to Nick Holsworth in Moscow. Nick, we know that there's not much love lost between these two leaders. So what exactly did come out of this meeting?
Well, that's quite right. If you looked at the body language, if you've seen the pictures, it was pretty awkward. Putin is still playing his cards pretty close to his chest. He promised a loan of $1.5 billion to Lukashenko to prop up the economy in Belarus. And he also said that Russia would do all it could to support the union treaty that exists between these two countries. It's a common economic space. There's normally no border between the two countries. They're supposed to have been working towards a common currency for some time, although that hasn't materialised, mainly because Lukashenko has been dragging his heels over this. Now, what is interesting here is that President Putin also said that Russia didn't believe in foreign meddling in Belarus. Lukashenko had been trying to push Putin, saying that NATO had been having military manoeuvres on its borders and suggesting that Russia should really be sending troops in. And Putin was quite clear. He said that there was no reason to do that. Russian paratroops who are currently engaged in the first ever 10 days of military drills with their Belarusian counterparts would be coming home, he said. He emphasised that Lukashenko had long experience of government and that he felt that with all his experience, he should be able to sort this out internally, and he had confidence that he could do that. He also praised the idea of holding a constitutional reform and fresh elections after that, although that's something which the opposition has shot down, saying that they don't believe that will solve the major issues that they see in Belarus, which is principally that Lukashenko has outstayed his welcome and is running the country as his own personal fiefdom.
Nick, I'm sorry to do this to you, but I'm going to have to change tack here with you, because we've been getting word in the last half hour or so from Berlin, from the hospital where opposition figure Alexei Navalny is seemingly recovering. They say he's certainly managed to move from his bed briefly, and they do say his condition has improved. It turns out that Emmanuel Macron, the French president, has had a phone conversation with Vladimir Putin about Alexei Navalny, where he's asked the Russian leader to shed light on the attempted murder of Navalny, with Putin responding that, as far as he's concerned, Russia has nothing to say. From where you are now, what is the situation in regards to Alexei Navalny?
Well, that's quite right. I mean, first of all, President Putin has basically told the French president to mind his own business, and that the suggestion that the Kremlin is involved in the poisoning, the attempted murder, as President Macron called it, of Alexei Navalny is nonsense. The Russians have been insisting that they still need to see the full results of these tests, which have now been corroborated by French and other scientists, in addition to the German scientists. And, of course, the other latest development is that The Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, who was due in Berlin soon for a meeting with his German counterpart, has pulled out of those talks because he said he was only given a 90-minute slot with his German counterpart, although the German side is saying that they advised the Russians of this already 10 or 11 days ago. So, I mean, really, we're now in a situation where, with Navalny improving in hospital in Berlin, the relations between Berlin and Moscow are pretty shaky, and the relations between Paris and Moscow seem to be on a similar course at the moment.
Nick Holdsworth from Moscow, thank you. Moving on to London now, where there's growing concern that Britain might indeed be heading for a no-deal Brexit by the end of the year. This after growing tensions in recent weeks between London and Brussels. Its Parliament this Monday will debate the Internal Markets Bill. Now, that's a proposal that's been put forward by Boris Johnson's government, even though it will break with international law. Former Prime Ministers David Cameron and Tony Blair have both strongly objected to their government's plans. Benedict Pavio in London has more.
Now 5 former prime ministers, 3 of them Conservative former prime ministers, the latest being David Cameron, but previously we had Theresa May and Sir John Major condemning this internal market bill because it does, they agree, infringe international law, as admitted by the Northern Ireland Secretary Randall Lewis in the House of Commons last week. But it's not just Conservative former prime ministers, it's all living former prime ministers, because you've also got Tony Blair, the Labour former prime minister, and also Gordon Brown, who have condemned this bill. So it is clear that it is provoking a huge amount of controversy, not least also because the former Attorney General, Geoffrey Cox, this morning said he will vote against it. And they're basically all saying that this will damage the international reputation of the United Kingdom, damage trust. And Geoffrey Cox said it was unconscionable damage to Britain's international reputation.
In other news, and as the World Health Organization reported its highest ever record number of daily cases, its European chief says Europe is expected to see a rise in the number of COVID-19 deaths in October and November. This as the continent is experiencing a surge of cases, although the death rate has remained relatively stable. But the ongoing resurgence is expected to lead to an increase in the fatality rate, according to the organisation's Europe Director, Hans Kluge. Now, the UK has reported 5 deaths and more than 3,300 new coronavirus infections on Sunday. It's marked the 3rd day in a row that new cases surpassed 3,000. These are the highest figures since May, and public health experts are calling on the government to adopt a clearer, stricter strategy to prevent the worst, as Erin Agonki reports.
Revellers enjoy a last weekend of partying before England's latest coronavirus restrictions take effect. As of Monday, gatherings of more than 6 people indoors and outdoors are prohibited in England, sparking frustration over perceived mixed messaging from Downing Street.
It does feel a little bit like you was encouraged to go out, eat, drink, we have to get the economy going, and now it's a bit like it's all your fault.
Those who break the rules risk on-the-spot fines of £100, while repeat offenders risk having to pay up to £3,200. Under the new rules, however, larger gatherings are still permitted at gyms, schools, places of worship and employment, weddings and funerals. Similar measures were passed in Scotland and in Wales, though children under the ages of 11 and 12 there are exempt. Public health experts acknowledge that there are some inconsistencies, though they concede the new measures are the only way to avoid making stricter decisions in the near future.
I'm afraid, it's going to cause pain and suffering for us all to go back to some degree of lockdown. But if we don't do this now, we're going to be right back in hard lockdown in short order. That's the only way we have at the moment for controlling this.
The United Kingdom is Europe's worst-hit country by COVID-19, with more than 41,600 deaths.
And European leaders have been talking to Chinese President Xi Jinping, seeking trade and investment despite tensions over Hong Kong's freedoms and Beijing's treatment of its Uyghur minority. Chinese officials, EU chiefs Charles Michel and Ursula von der Leyen, along with German Chancellor Angela Merkel, have been holding a video conference. It replaces a full summit with all 27 EU leaders cancelled because of coronavirus. James Wilson has more.
It's a highly lucrative, although increasingly tense trading relationship. Last year, the EU was China's largest commercial partner, with the two exchanging over 1.5 billion euros a day. The EU was a net importer, with Chinese telecommunications equipment topping the list of products, which also includes electrical machinery and baby carriages. But the Chinese market is increasingly attractive for European exports as well, with car and aircraft manufacturers proving particularly successful. And as recently as last year, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi called for Brussels and Beijing to begin talks on signing a free trade agreement. But those hopes have dissipated in recent months. EU nations have become harshly critical of China's initial handling of the coronavirus pandemic, its crackdown on dissent in Hong Kong, and treatment of Uyghur Muslims. Instead of taking steps towards a larger trade agreement, officials are expected to sign a less ambitious agreement that protects regional food designations. Irish whiskey, feta and Chinese bean paste are all expected to benefit, but it stands in stark contrast to the ambition and optimism of the April 2019 summit, when China's President Xi pledged to open up his economy to European firms.
In other news, Japan's governing party has elected Yoshihide Suga as its new leader to succeed Shinzo Abe, meaning he is almost certain to become the country's next prime minister. Abe last month, announcing his resignation for reasons of ill health. Suga currently serving as chief cabinet secretary in the current administration and have been widely expected to win. Here in France, large parts of the country continue to experience heatwave conditions. In Paris, the mercury is expected to hit a record 33 degrees Celsius this Monday. The temperatures are not at all usual for September, up to 11 degrees above what is typical at this time of year. And as Monty Francis tells us, it's just the latest reminder of the effects of climate change.
The blazing sun and hotter than usual September weather is making some French people feel like summer vacation never ended. 29 degrees at the beach in the south of France. Even for regulars, it came as a surprise.
On a la chance, hein. Regardez. Regardez le temps qu'il fait. Très très bonne. On est en plus au mois de septembre, c'est le top.
It's not just the south of France feeling the heat. 27 degrees on the coast near Dunkirk and 28 degrees at the beach near Nantes. But in Paris, far away from the beach, the mercury reached 30 degrees Sunday.
Mais quand on y réfléchit un peu plus profondément, c'est vrai qu'on se dit que c'est peut-être un petit peu anormal.
These hotter than usual temperatures in the fall are something experts say we should get used to.
Cette année, on a aussi connu un été chaud. Alors ça ne veut pas dire que les étés qui vont suivre seront forcément plus chauds que les étés qui se sont écoulés. En revanche, la tendance de fond, elle est là. On est sur une tendance de fond qui nous annonce qu'on va avoir des étés de plus en plus longs et de plus en plus chauds.
Aside from the warmer temperatures in France, in 2020 there are signs across the globe that experts say are concerning. The global temperature in May is up by almost a full degree from last year. In certain places, world records. 56 degrees this summer in Death Valley in California, 38 degrees in Siberia, and more than 20 degrees in the Antarctic. In the short term, in France, relief is on the way. The country's heat wave is expected to continue at least until the middle of the week, and then it should cool off.
And that's it for this edition. Do stay with us here on France 24.